gentlemen, this is Unsportsmanlike, presented by Progressive Insurance on the ESPN app, SiriusXM Channel 80. Don't forget to tell your smart speaker to play ESPN Radio as well as ESPN2 and ESPNU. Miss Courtney Cronin, how are you this morning?
I am well. I stayed up to watch the entirety of that Colorado game, so I'm feeling it a little bit this morning. But,
yes.
Freddie, that was so close down until the very end, and we knew North Dakota State was a good team coming in. I understand they're an FCS program, but whoever had the decision to schedule them as the opener on a Thursday, that's, I think, part of the meeting that's going on this morning. A little debrief at 9 a.m. No more scheduling FCS opponents, especially really good ones, as the season opener for Colorado.
There are better ways to spend $1.5 million. That's not the way to do it. If you are an FBS team and you schedule that team opening day, it is in your best interest. I'm telling all the Power 5 conferences and Notre Dame, do not schedule North Dakota State as your opening game of the season, because you may wind up getting your feelings hurt. Because believe me, sometimes a win is an L and sometimes an L is a W. Both of those things can be true here. And if you're Colorado, Courtney, I could not even imagine the conversation that they had lost that game last night, with all the conversation leading into this game that had everything and nothing to do with football, involving Deion Sanders and the media and hurt feelings and not acting like an adult at times and being immature and being petty, yada, yada, yada. Can you imagine, Courtney, what that narrative would have sounded like this morning had North Dakota State pulled off that upset against the Buffaloes of Colorado?
And it looked like it. They were trailing at halftime. And then, of course, that first possession, the way the ball bounced off of the North Dakota State player's leg and then into his teammate's hands for the interception, I thought that was the dagger right there. So to see Colorado respond and be able to pull off a win here, albeit a close one, I get that this probably doesn't feel great if you're the Buffaloes, but hell, you're coming off a 4-8 season. They had to win this game. They've got to win more games than they did last year. They haven't had a 6-win season since 2016. The bar, honestly, is not very high, nor should it be. But if you're Deion Sanders, after doing all the talking that he's done over the last 18 months, more or less, and truly what's gone on throughout the last couple of weeks. We heard Mark Jones talk about it during the broadcast when he referenced the CBS reporter that Deion was apparently not too happy with that in. But that's a huge part of the storyline around Colorado right now, and this sort of, we only want positive coverage. Well, you know, one way to get positive coverage, you have to win the games, and you have to do it in convincing fashion. This did not really convince many people, Freddie.
Well, if you're Deion Sanders, whether it convinces people, and I'm with you on that one, or does not convince people, it's better to be 1-0 than 0-1, because that's exactly how he feels.
Let's move on from there. I'm going to try my best to hold back my anger, but we got the W, so I'm happy.
Well, he may be trying his best, but you could hear the anger in his voice. And watching that game last night, you could see the anger on the face of Coach Deion Sanders of Colorado football, because with all that pressure, and his team played like they were under pressure last night. They played like mentally the way transfer portal hard. 51 players going out and 42 players coming in to the Colorado football program, especially in the offense and defensive lines. His players outside of Travis Hunter, who's the best player in the field, and his quarterback, his son, Shedeur Sanders, they played loose and free like they were enjoying the football game. The rest of those dudes, Courtney, last night, they played like if they had lost their game, if they had lost that game last night, that season potentially could have been over after week 1 involving Colorado.
This roster, you mentioned all those players that went out and those who came in. 61% of whether they were the high school recruits or guys who came to Colorado via the transfer portal, 61% of that roster from a year ago is no longer there. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Nobody will just yet, considering this is one game. It is a win, but it was a close win over an FCS opponent. We don't know if this is a good team. Like, we really don't.
You're right. Yeah.
We didn't know last year. I mean, yes, there was the first month of the season and then everything else. What we do know is that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, regardless of what Colorado's record ends up being this year, both of those guys have to be in the Heisman Trophy conversation. You saw so many glimpses of that yesterday. And I just hope that, like, their great play, and Travis Hunter being such a throwback player, he starts out on defense and then he ends up leading the team in receiving. You don't ever see that anymore. That is what I hope doesn't get overshadowed by any of the other nonsense that goes on around this team this year and its move back to the Big 12. And hopefully for their sake, they can learn from this. They came out tight. Like, you're right. Like, this did feel like a team that was playing under pressure, being a legitimately good team should have won.
Right.
But I honestly, on the flip side of that, I don't feel like this would have been a very massive upset, despite the fact that that's an FCS opponent, because NDSU's good, Freddie.
They always have been.
That's where Trey Lance, think what you want. That's where Trey Lance came from. Like, they're a good team that has produced NFL players, Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, and I think since 2016, they had like a stretch of 6 years where they knocked off 6 FBS opponents. They don't play FBS teams that often, but when they do, they're usually pretty successful.
Yeah, if you're an FBS team, it is in your best interest going forward to not schedule North Dakota State. You do that maybe week 2 or week 3 before your conference schedule gets started. You do not do that week 1. Colorado almost found out in the wrong way last night, even though they pulled out a 31-26 win over North Dakota State. By the way, you can be a part of Unsportsmanlike Nation. You can do that in the Dr. Pepper calling line. So hit us up at 888-SAY-ESPN. That is 888-729-3776. ESPN Nation presented by Dr. Pepper. It's not college football season without the delicious taste of an ice-cold Dr. Pepper. College football, it's a pepper thing. With Courtney Cronin, Freddie Coleman in for the guys and lady today on Unsportsmanlike and ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and ESPNU. Check out also what Deion Sanders had to say about this keeping it 100, then there's keeping it prime time, prime time, prime time. Because a lot of people he understands are here for either one thing or the other, meaning a win or a loss.
We knew they weren't going to lay down. You know, we wanted to win decisively, and if we wouldn't have given up that last touchdown, it would have looked better, but we just could pick it apart. And you ladies, I apologize, all you want, but you're here for the WL. Some of you got upset that we got the W. Some of you, I'm really mad that we didn't get the L. So God bless y'all. You have to wait again till next week.
The right, your attention. I clearly understand that you may not want us to win, but we got the W, so some of you are happy, some of you are sad, but either way, God bless y'all. Go off into your lives and this holiday weekend, and we'll see you next week when we take on Nebraska. He has to have that kind of perspective because that's where Colorado football is. Courtney, you're exactly right. We don't know if they're a good team or going to be a good team or whatever that's going to be after week 1. We don't really know that about anybody after week 1 in football. I don't care if it's high school, NFL, college football. But when you're that program and you're a guy like Deion Sanders in charge of that program and all that attention has been a part of this program since last year, he clearly understands perspective. There are going to be those that are going to root for Colorado. There are going to be those that are going to root against Colorado. But he has to be, in my opinion, above that and not have that situation where he gets petty once again. He's got to worry about his football team. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He almost got there, but then he said, you know what? God bless y'all. We'll see y'all next week. He's got to avoid those kind of things, in my opinion, that brings even more pressure and heat on the young man trying to win football games when it comes to Colorado.
For the person who claims that he doesn't need outside motivation to put him on the path towards his goal, he said that his entire career, he said that his upbringing, what he's been through, that's the juice that made him one of the best NFL corners that we've ever seen, that has made him into this Coach Prime persona. Yet he keeps feeding into this the perceived haters out there. Can you show me where the haters are for Colorado football?
Sean Keeler, the Denver Post.
I don't think those are haters for Colorado football. I feel like those are people who don't like the Deion Sanders antics. Those are two separate things. Like, I don't think there's a single person out there, frankly, Freddie, who gives a rip about Colorado football enough to be a hater.
Well, I disagree with that.
They may not like Deion Sanders and what he brings to the table and all of the showboating and all of that, but that's not Colorado football.
Yeah, but he is Colorado football. So
I disagree with that. I think he's a representation of where the program is going.
No, I disagree with that because when you're the head of a program as a college football coach, you are that program. You represent that program. For many years, Nick Saban was not just the face of college football. He was the face of Alabama football. When you thought about Alabama football, you thought about Nick Saban. It's the same thing with Colorado football. You think of Colorado football, you're going to think of Deion Sanders. And there are going to be plenty of people, fair or unfair, positive or negative, whatever that's going to be, that are going to associate both of those two together when it comes to his persona because he is the coach of Colorado football, which essentially means he is Colorado football when it comes to Deion Sanders.
But the way that he's phrasing that, like, go ahead and then say it like that. Say, I understand that some of you are here because you want me to win or you want me to lose. Nobody's talking about we want Shadur Sanders, we want Travis Hunter, we want all of these other players who have been working for months and months and months to prepare for this season, that they want them to lose. If it's a Deion versus everybody else, that's a completely separate story. Colorado football is moving back to the Big 12. They were 4-8 last year. This is not a winning program, and it has not been since the days of Coach McCartney. Decades ago, Freddie.
I know.
At one time, Colorado had a lot of mystique around this program.
Sure did. No question.
Deion Sanders is trying to bring that back, but getting in the way of that, like, you need to call it what it is. It's not that people hate the football program. It's that they're indifferential to a polarizing figure that just so happens to be the head coach of it. No one hated Nick Saban when he was at Alabama. They hated Alabama because Alabama won all the time. It was never about the head coach. Like, if Deion wants to carry that same sort of energy where it's like you hate our program because we win all the time, then you got to take a step back from that and not inject yourself into the middle of a storyline when your team barely just won. That was not the right thing that he should have been saying at the end of the game. I'm glad that he sort of redeemed himself walking off there with the God bless you all, but he's got to learn from the way that this has gone down the last couple of weeks that he's only bringing more negative spotlight on himself by doing what he's done in these press conferences.
Well, here's something to that point. I think he's doing that by design to try to reduce pressure on his team.
Reduce pressure?
Yeah,
How does that reduce pressure?
Because everybody's going to be focusing on Deion Sanders and talking about him. And believe me, social media will completely disagree with you how they go out to Colorado football. Because last night after that game was over, I woke up early this morning and just seeing the hate on social media regarding Colorado football that had nothing to do with Deion Sanders. Some of the stuff being thrown at Shadur Sanders on social media and Travis Hunter, I'm thinking, okay, this is where we live at when it comes to stuff like that. So there are plenty of haters out there when it comes to Colorado football on social media. You can say that whatever it is what social media is, but those haters are out there, not just going after Deion Sanders. So he also knows this. If I can do whatever I can, that you're going to put more of that focus on me, this way my guys can go out and play football and not to have this kind of pressure situation that's going to be there anyway. He's going to do everything he can, Courtney, to try to reduce as much pressure as he possibly can, even though that's going to be an impossible job in modern times in modern football when it comes to college football and being that kind of personality that is Deion Sanders. That's always going to be there front and center, whether you like it or whether you hate it. But he did get that win, as it was with Colorado against North Dakota State.